hosts, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, and your Colonial Champion, Sean McCoy. Welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to another edition of the Court-Martail Podcast, the podcast made by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, and I am here solo today. And I'm sure you're probably expecting, to some degree, the Court-Martail Podcast to go over WrestlePalooza, and I regret to inform all of you that we will not be doing so on this program. But if you would like to see the review that our nefarious co-host, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, and TAW Gaming's Josh Ageddon did on WrestlePalooza, the link is in the description below. It is a very good review of about 90 minutes long. You will not regret giving it a listen. WrestlePalooza was the first pay-per-view, PLE, whatever you want to call it, of the ESPN era, and there's a couple of reasons why I didn't watch it, and we're using today, I guess, this is kind of a bits and pieces episode where I'm just gonna talk through some things, and maybe this will be something of a therapeutic session for all of us here, as I've been really trying to come to terms with how I feel about wrestling lately. You know, one of the conveniences of me and my wrestling fandom is that I left wrestling when it was hard to watch. And I mean that in two respects. You know, in 2009, I was living in a house where I got cable and I got to see TNA and I got to watch Raw and do all that. I didn't see the pay-per-views, but I got to see the TV shows and catch up on the internet with what went on as far as the pay-per-views were concerned. Having said that, one of the things that really disconnected me from that was when we moved to a different apartment, and that didn't have cable and we didn't really use TV very much, so I kind of lost the ability to do that, so I dropped out at about early 2010, and it also just so happened to coincide with the heel Michael Cole run, so I'm really not that upset about that, because I was also starting to get unimpressed with what was happening to WWE anyway, especially considering that Shawn Michaels retired in 2010 and he was my favorite wrestler at the time. But then when the WWE Network came along, I waited a year for the bugs to work out, but come WrestleMania 31 in 2015, that's when I got the network and I started actually watching and being able to watch shows again, and I really appreciated that time. The difficulty now is that WWE, in this switch to nickel and diming the fans out of everything, have switched to this new ESPN service where it costs $30 to watch a month to watch the same level of programming, where if the Peacock Premium Plus was, I think, $18, so you didn't get all the constant ads, but even with Premium Plus, you got an absurd amount of ads because they're everywhere. There was commercials everywhere. There was ads all over the mat. There's ads all over the ring post, on the tables. You know, it's the transformation that this company has taken from changing the booking so that we were all feeling much more satisfied a la WrestleMania 40 to just shilling out to the highest bidder absolutely every single piece of your life that you possibly can and of the business that you can. It's exactly what happened when they did this WWE Unreal, where they're really pulling the curtain back even further than they were before. Triple H called wrestling a movie about a sport. And I don't care how accurate that is. I don't need to hear Triple H saying those words. You know, I don't know. It's the kayfabe guy in me. It's the old man yelling at the cloud, but I don't need to hear that. I understand that we look at wrestling differently in 2025 than we did back in the territory days. And I'm not trying to knock that or say that there was anything particularly wrong about Unreal. I didn't watch it. Out of respect for what kayfabe used to be, I didn't watch it. I'm not saying it wasn't good. I'm not saying it didn't have good insights. I just wasn't interested. And a lot of people who have listened to me on this podcast know that that is the case. You know, and know that I'm one of those types of people that, yes, somewhat, some could say rather insufferable, but I like having a respect for what kayfabe is or was. You know, that's why I like CIW. I mean, there's some level of kayfabe breaking, but, you know, you just, what it means is important, and WWE always keeps trying to establish a kayfabe, but they want it sewn in reality, but it can't possibly be, so they're making it so that they're trying to frame it so that all these wrestlers are actors who are just athletic, and I don't know. But in any case, it's been this entire attitude of WWE, I think, that's really starting to bother me, to the point where I'm really not interested in their shows anymore. And let's be clear about this from the get-go. It's not like the quality of the shows has been bad. It's just that they have been very lazy. And it's a different kind of lazy than Vince. It's a laziness in the sense of, we've done these same angles the same way with different people over and over and over again, and we can't come up with any other better ideas to do it. How many black hoodies have we seen in the past 3 years since Triple H has taken over to debut usually a Samoan, but somebody, anybody, quite a good chunk. You know, it's just that right now it's so, and there's two dichotomies of matches. There's the matches that nobody pays attention to the crowd in the ring, so that it's just a match and the people aren't really invested. Or you get people who are maxing out on the milk, and there's more milk now that Kurt retired than there ever was when Kurt was around, because it's just milk all the time. Look at the crowd, let the crowd chant and yell and be their own part of the show, and make them feel like they're actors on the stage as well, which is, I've never thought that was a good power you should give to anyone in wrestling. But to me, it's just that this, between $30 a month for ESPN, which I wouldn't pay. It was one thing to pay $18 and you got the entire tape library, but just for the live experience, ESPN, that's not worth it. And I will admit, it's easy enough to go hardy har 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 and find a way to watch it by cheaper means, let's put it. And to be fair, for the match of the week that we're going to do later, that's exactly what I did, because I'm not wasting my money on that. There's plenty of other resources to be able to access that kind of material. But that being said, I almost didn't even want to bother going through that kind of trouble. And a lot of that is just that the way that the booking has just slowed down, the way that I've lost faith in the way that the booking has gone, it's been a lot of stop and start shit. They'll start something and then drop it just instantly or a couple weeks later. Seeing his heel turn, they actually openly admitted, hey, we're going to drop this because The Rock was dumb and convinced me to do something dumb, so now we're just going to come back. And ever since then, they have been flying from the seat of their pants with this John Cena final year. And I say what you want, no matter how you finish this thing, John Cena's last year, this experiment of let's plan a retirement ahead of time, so far to me, even though there's been great moments, even though the matches haven't been terrible, when it comes to the scatterbrain Jane way of booking this, it's been a disaster. It has been incoherent. We had such a long, drawn-out story built between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and letting that simmer and fester and getting all of that together and weaving this rich tapestry. And since then, it feels like this year, 2025, they've just abandoned all of that layering. And it's getting harder and harder to watch the shows and care, because the way that they're structuring these builds is there is no build. There's a few things that happen, but that reminds me a little bit more of what the Vince era was like, even though it was way worse written material that they were forcing the talent to say. At the same time, structurally speaking, it's not that different. And, you know, we mentioned this when Triple H originally took over, that we had to be careful to make Triple H out that he was going to completely reformat the WWE. That was not his job. His job was to make the WWE more palatable to a wider audience, which he succeeded in doing just by putting some coherency where there was none. The difficulty now is that they are sputtering their tires hard on how to build something to that epic conclusion. And this is what happened with NXT. And that's what ultimately led to Vince going and throwing some color vomit onto it and ruining that show. But ultimately, the reason Vince took control, I would imagine, was that a lot of NXT got real stagnant. It was the same shit, or the Matt Riddle who fries fish in the fish department if you're frying fish, or whatever that was. I don't know, consult your local patisserie. But in any case, poissonnerie. And if you do, you'll clean it up. But it's just, right now, it's just been very difficult for me to want to invest in anything that WWE's doing, because it doesn't feel like they're investing in anything they're doing, except selling off pieces of their intellectual property. Not in the literal sense, but we now have not only a Saudi Rumble, we have now got a confirmed Saudi Mania. WrestleMania 43 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. And listen, what WWE's dealings with Saudi Arabia are well documented. They have long since wanted to do this with the Crown Prince. I'm not trying to make any sort of stance on anything that country does, given the fact that would, honestly, when it comes to the entire world, that would be ultimately hypocritical, because every country does horrible things. And that's just the truth. That is just the truth. But I'm not getting into that. But right now, their business dealings I don't blame them for taking WWE out of the American market. I really don't, because they've got hotter crowds. They've got more electric crowds willing to do and to cheer for what they are telling them to cheer for in those markets than they do in the States. And a lot of that is Vince's doing. A lot of that is Vince really hurting the market, even though a lot of these towns now in the States are building themselves back. The problem is, I think that they're recognizing that they're going to get way more money hand over fist by going to a lot of these places that they don't normally, than they do with the consistent markets that they can put for their television that will probably draw well anyway. You know, it's not like they're only selling 1,000 tickets to one of their TVs. It's not like they're selling 900 tickets out of a 2,300 seat arena or anything like that. Looking firmly in the direction of TK. Give me a second on that. But between Saudi Mania and I'm not really interested in any of that, because, you know, remember back in the day when those Saudi Arabia shows were supposed to be quote unquote non-canon, and nobody viewed them as non-canon, except they all kept getting brought up and nobody wanted to do that. And now here we are, and there's an inextricable tie, and that really puts a very interesting moral conflict of interest for anyone who is wrestling in the company. But at this point, no matter which side you choose, no matter what you do, you're going to get judged and ridiculed. So, well, I don't know. It's a very interesting state of affairs when it comes to that. But me personally, it's just disappointing. It's just disappointing to me to see that manifest itself in a way where WWE now, everything that once was sacred is no longer. And that's TKO's right to do, right? That they sold the company in order to do that. And, you know, as somebody who listens to a decent amount of Jim Cornette, one of the things I've hated hearing Brian Last say is that WWE and TKO are eventually going to sell to the Saudis. And at this rate, that's looking a lot more probable. And that scares the hell out of me, man. That scares the hell out of me, because I don't know. Shady companies are shady companies, but it would really be disheartening to me. And I'm already losing interest in the investment of the booking and all of that anyway. And I don't really trust this brain trust anymore the way that I did last year to give us the payoff that we should have, because of how much has been dropped. Remember R-Truth? They've got R-Truth white hot to face a heel Cena. He shaved his head. He became Ron Killings. And then he went just right back to R-Truth. Why? Why do that to him? Why make him go back to dumb comedy shit? If you had no plan for him, don't have him do that. But there's no follow through. The problem with WWE right now is, unless you're in the very top angle, and I don't even know if that, actually, I take that back, almost exemplified by the main event scene, there is no follow through to anything. They are patching shit together on the spot and it's not doing it for me. And the matches themselves are fine. The matches themselves are fine. I really don't have any issue with a lot of them. They're just either way too long, or they go on, or they take too long, or they're just not that interesting, or they're in a death spot and they're just, the crowd's not invested, and neither am I. You know, the silly shit is gone. You know, the stuff that made us actually angry in the Vince era is gone, but it's been replaced with just like dead air. And to me, I'm losing interest. I'm really just losing interest in the product as a whole. And especially with the way that ESPN is price gouging, the ticket prices are through the roof. You know, I'm glad that I got to be able to do the not seat filling for WWE for Monday Night Raw and for, I think, a SmackDown taping I did once. You know, I'm glad I got to see the shows I did when I did, because say what you want about Vince McMahon, he did care enough about the fans to not want to outprice the tickets for them. He still wanted people to be able to afford coming to shows. And what has happened with TKO, where even some of the cheapest seats are going for $500-$600. You know, a lot of families couldn't afford that. And even a lot of the diehard fans couldn't afford that. To the point where I always said for many years that Vince threw the fans overboard when he had nothing to compete with. You know, when WCW went out of business, Vince said, it's my doing, it's my show, and I'm going to book it the way I want to book it. And in large part creatively, that was true. The problem is, TKO is doing that both creatively and financially. And they're doing just enough to keep some people invested in the show creatively, but it's losing its sting for me. And it's really starting to make me think that we're really going to just get this. And I think that if it's lazy formulaic stuff that goes on, it's only going to be so long before the hardcore wrestling fan gets outpriced by that. Because you know the prices are going to go up rather than down. You know that's going to be the case. And eventually, there's only going to be a very certain kind of tax bracket that's going to be able to afford tickets to a wrestling show, which may or may not be ideal for them, because then they can further manipulate who says what and how. But it seems to me like right now, WWE is in a place where the ship's leaving without a good majority of the fan base. And a lot of fans will be willing to just put up with it. There's a lot of loyalists of WWE. And that's what WWE's banking on, that those ingrained fans are able to keep things moving, keep the machine moving, keep buying the tickets. And that's another big reason why they're going international, because they know that those fans are starved for wrestling, as far as what WWE considers real, which is them and them alone. And so when they come to whatever country it is, when they go to Lisbon, Spain, then they get a shit ton of money. And now they're telling the stadiums that they have to pay WWE to get them to go there in order to do that. And I feel bad for Indianapolis, because they got screwed out of a WrestleMania, and this WrestlePalooza was like the consolation prize. But they're good. They already made sure that it's not about the fans anymore when it comes to the locations of WrestleMania, because they're going back to Vegas to try and increase their revenue count. And they basically openly admitted that's why they're going. And so it's very clear that the direction that the owners of TKO have decided to take WWE is first come, first serve, everything's for sale, and we love money more than anything itself. And so did Vince. But he made money in a way that felt more reasonable. And here's the scary part, and the dangerous part here for me, is that because Vince McMahon is getting a little more baby-faced as a businessman, as a result of what TKO has done with WWE, my fear is that is going to ease WWE's fans' acceptance of Vince coming back on television. And I'm praying to God that's not the case. Because as we have mentioned before, Vince is back. That's it. Close the book. End of story. We're done. And there will be no more pay-per-view reviews. There will be no more of any of that. We'll watch maybe some old wrestling of WWE, You know, and honestly, that's, I think, where I'm going to take a lot of the Court-Martail podcast now, because to be quite honest with you, the ability to just take cheaper means to watch WWE, I have to want to watch the show in order to want to take it from a side direction. You know, and I'm not paying $30. There's no way in hell I'm paying $30 a month. I'm keeping Peacock as long as the tape library is still on Peacock, but once Peacock loses it, they lose me, you know, and I like football, so I can watch Peacock Sunday night games if I want to, but that's not a deal breaker. You know, I've got Paramount Plus to be able to watch the Jets suck every fucking week. And I'm not even a Jets fan. I'm a Buccaneers fan, but that's what I get. Although recently it's been the Patriots suck every week, but in any case, the point is there was a level to the reasonability of it. But now you need $30 for ESPN. You still need 18. You still need at least 10 for Peacock, and you need another 10 or more for Netflix to watch Raw. And so it's just, and this is where we are headed. I mean, this was the way the streaming services were, but now it is going to be the point where if you want to watch all the shows, and let's say you add, I'm being generous here, let's say you add a $30 cable bill. Then you add 30 for ESPN, you add 10 for Peacock, you add, and that cable package includes NXT and all those channels. So you've got $30, $60, $70, $80 if you want to keep up with all the WWE programming throughout the course of every single show that they air. $80 a month, $80 a month to get the complete WWE experience. And that is a heavy ask for a great number of families in this world, especially in this country. You know, to ask for $80 a month to watch WWE, that's a lot. That's asking a lot. And I'm sure that the cable bills are a lot more than that nowadays. I don't know. I don't have cable. And if I do, I don't pay for the bill. So that's not really relevant to me. But think about the diehard fans. And I know they're all going to do it. They're all going to spend $80 a month to keep up with all their wrestling because that's how diehard wrestling fans are. But the wrestling fans aren't helping matters. And the wrestling fans, I mean, yes, we listen to the fans and blah, 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 but they're not helping matters either. Because so long as they keep doing it, they're going to keep price gouging. Too many pronouns, pal. So long as the fans keep subscribing to all of these things for the sake of WWE, the more WWE is just going to jack those prices up, knowing that those diehard loyalist followers will just blindly, zombie-like, continue to do whatever WWE asks them to do. That's the kind of fan that Vince has trained to be fans of the WWE. That's the wild part of where we are with the WWE right now, and it's sad to me because the vibes in 2025 have been off from the start. Josh again called it. Skylar called it. I wanted to see to believe, but here we are at the end of September 2025, and I can say with strong confidence, the vibes are bad. The vibes are bad. Mid at best with WWE. Because I don't know what exactly we're going to end up getting when it comes to the end of John Cena. I'm afraid it really is going to be The Rock at Saturday Night's main event. You know, and it's just, to me, I'm worried. I'm worried, not just because of what WWE is, but I'm worried that I'm going to have to walk away from modern WWE again for a whole different set of reasons. And I didn't want to believe that this was going to be the case. But at the end of the day, you could take Vince out of the you can't un-WWE WWE. You know, and to honestly think that Triple H was going to seismically alter the presentation, it was asking a lot. Yes, a lot has changed. And a lot has changed. And a lot of the, but, you know, we're looking at it now from the perspective of, was this really for the better? And another thing that's kind of adding to my jadedness is the fact that there's no competition. There's no alternative for WWE because they really are the only game in town, and they're the only realistically buyable game in town. You know, yes, it's all milked to death, but those are where the only real quality matches are happening. It's where, if there is any angle of description, it's happening in WWE. If there's a good promo happening, it's happening in WWE. Where it's not happening is in AEW. And now let's lay this on the table. I have not watched AEW programming in a very long time because I just can't. I just can't watch it. It's Tony Khan's booking is just nonsensical. It doesn't flow with anything. I don't really like the way the show is formatted. Every so often when I'm at the gym on a Wednesday night, I'll catch a little bit of Dynamite and I'm like, I sit there watching, what the fuck are we doing? And I'm really grateful that there's no audio on, because a lot of the time it's just random fighting. And I don't know why anyone's fighting against each other, the whole reason. And a lot of these promos and explanations are not very good. It's just hard to follow for me. You know, maybe I'm not big-brained enough, but giving the ratings of AEW, I don't think I'm the only one with this level of critique. And here we are, almost 6 years in. Actually, we are about to be 6 years in when it comes to Dynamite. October 23rd, I think, is the anniversary. Or somewhere along that line is when Dynamite started. Here we are almost 6 years in. Look at the reputation AEW has now. It's a joke. Everyone treats it like a joke, except for the WWE has diehard fans. AEW has die-harder fans. They are, the ones that are loyal are really fucking loyal. And they try so hard to cope, no pun intended, with the fact that show is just an indie show with a budget, and always has been. It always has been. It just had some highlights before they decided that they weren't in the interest of making money and doing business and actually being a pro wrestling show. And even with the format that Tony has been trying to get across, look at how many people are injured. All of his top stars are out with injuries because the kind of format that Tony has been trying to do is unsustainable for the body. And there's no real care taken for the wrestlers. Yes, he might be a great guy, but he's no figurehead. He's clowned himself out of position of ever being taken seriously. And unfortunately, it has completely destroyed the viability of the brand to where there's no hope. It's been we've all said that Ring of Honor is a zombie promotion. AEW really is just a zombie promotion. It's been bitten. It just hasn't transformed yet. But it's been bitten by the zombie cordyceps in the veins by the vampire, to completely mash up a whole mess of different storylines. But the venom is coursing through the veins of AEW, but it doesn't know it's snake bit. It doesn't know the venom is about to stop its heart. When it's gonna happen is when the network finally says, we're not putting up with this losing ratings or staying at the same level of ratings anymore. We are done with this. And especially if Paramount does ultimately buy the intellectual property of Warner Brothers Discovery, because there were rumors that was going to take place, which, by the way, is kind of a level of trust bust, I would say, because then that leaves us only two major media companies. That would be NBC and Paramount, and I think that's maybe... and ABC and Disney, and that's it. That would be the big three. To take the fourth one out would be rough. That would be rough. But it's just, right now you're looking at what AEW has. Let's say that Warner does get rid of them. There's no place for them to go. WWE is everywhere else, as evidenced by the fact that you have to pay $6,000 or $80 a month. I was going to be exaggerating, but I actually came up with the numbers. But they're requiring you to pay $80 a month because they're on every streaming service there is. You get booted off the only one that's left. Where are you going to go, Tony? Where are you going to go? And now you're taking back control of the booking, and he thinks he knows what he's doing. He thinks he's got all the answers. Everything's great because this is a show made for one, Tony Khan. Tony said the biggest thing going for Tony was that Vince McMahon was more inept than he was. The second that a drop of coherency entered the WWE, Tony was cooked. Because there was no way that Tony Khan in his form was going to be able to do it. And besides, how many people were glazing that dude at the start? And that didn't help either, because we were all hopeful. We all were desperate to have something other than what Vince was giving us. Then WWE got better and AEW didn't. They got worse and worse and worse and worse. And Tony, in his delusion, keeps thinking everything is wonderful. And that's the truly tragic part. At least Vince Russo ultimately admitted that what he did was a failure. Tony will never understand the damage he has done to professional wrestling with what he has perpetrated on AEW programming. He doesn't realize it. Yes, are there some good matches? Yes. Are there good moments? Yes. Not many recently, but are there moments in AEW where you can go, okay, I can sink my teeth into that? Sure. But just like WCW in 1999 and 2000 had great moments here and there, had moments that made you go, okay, maybe there's something to this. In the same way that TNA, before they moved to Destination America, had glimpses here and there of good things, and they had pieces that you could sink your teeth into. Even with, and TNA, you can say that all the time. The thing is, and TNA is an anomaly because it somehow was able to pull itself out of the throngs of zombiedom, which it would be really hard to think that AEW would be able to do. But my point is, yes, there's always glimpses of good things on dying shows. Even dying sitcoms have a funny joke on their last episode. And that's the point I'm making here, is that it feels like the ship has sailed. Tony will not understand that he is bad at this. He is awful at this. And just because he has the money, and just because every single guy who has been there for forever is still blowing him to keep his money in their wallets, this is going to sink. This show is going to fail. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And that is truly heartbreaking for someone who wants an alternative to WWE, who wants something that could reshape how we view professional wrestling today, rather than making it look more like idiocy, the way that Tony Khan has. It's a disgrace. It is a disgrace to the wrestling business that the only shot, what feels like the only and final shot of an alternate company before WWE completely takes over the wrestling world, was Tony fucking Khan. That was our savior. And it turned out instead of getting the Messiah, we just got Life of Brian. And Tony Khan always does look on the bright side of life. But that doesn't mean that wrestling had to be strung up in order for it to have some level of respectability, because it's why I will never forgive Tony. I will never forgive Tony for blowing this chance. He had the chance and he fucking blew it. He lost every person that could have helped him, that could have mattered, that could have made stardom in another company possible, alienated them, chose the idiots, and now has the emperor has no clothes, but everything is great. And it's just the entire vibes of what pro wrestling is. It hurts, man. It just hurts. Because it feels like, to me, like I'm my only solace is apathy. And so I'm going to see, I think what's going to happen now is I'm not really interested in watching whole wrestling shows anymore, to be quite honest with you. At least as far as the ones that are shown on regular programming in current era. So my point is, like, I'm not going to watch the Royal Rumble and watch every ad and go and have the whole show on and see all of the We'll Be Right Backs and all of that. If I'm going to watch something, I will go find the match I want to see. And I think that's the best way to handle wrestling. You know, see the parts that matter, see the moments that matter, and see the moments that your friends say who do watch the show are good things to watch. And while we're on that topic, I want to talk a few pieces about WrestlePalooza. I want to get back to WrestlePalooza for a second because there were some things said on this podcast, not the one you're listening to now, but on the TAP that is in the description about WrestlePalooza that I would like to address. Let's first talk about the idea of, now for those of you who don't know what happened, I will do a brief recap of the show. Brock Lesnar versus John Cena started the match. Brock Lesnar hit John Cena with like 6 F5s and won. It was kind of like SummerSlam 2014, but he only went for one cover. It wasn't like some Herculean effort. Then the Usos took on the Brawns, and it was just a whole batch of chaos. It was a whole mess of chaos. And, you know, to be quite honest with you, and it kind of to further exemplify the point, I don't even remember. I'm going to have to look up on the spot what happened as far as the victors goes. I'm pretty sure that, if I'm not mistaken, that the Usos won. But Paul Heyman came out to introduce Brock. He was also there for when Braun and Braun did their thing. And here we go. Results. No, I take that back. The Usos lost. And LA Knight was a special guest referee. And thankfully, Braun and Braun won. I'm really starting to like how they gel as a team. I'm hoping that I agree with the sentiments that Josh Ageddon and Skylar said that they should get the tag titles. Because, for fuck's sake, can we make any tag title relevant for any reason at all, please? Please. I'm begging you, make any tag team championship mean a fucking thing, anything. Because they're way matter less than the pennies that the original belts from 2010 were said to resemble. But this brings up LA Knight, and I want to talk about LA Knight for a second because here we are, late September, and remember at Money in the Bank, I was pretty much, let's close the book on LA Knight, because I think that it is very clear that WWE is not going to give him what I want him to have, and that he has hit his ceiling and there's nowhere to go but back down. And truth be told, I think upper mid card is about where we're going to get him. I feel more confident than ever that LA Knight is not going to be the world champion that he deserved to be, that he should have been, that he could have been when the iron was hot, but couldn't do, and then everybody else came back and he had to get pushed down. And right now, it breaks my heart. That is probably more heartbreaking too, because really what WWE has done to LA Knight, to blue ball that man, and for a lot of other angles of that ilk, in favor of Jey fucking Uso. In favor of Jey Uso, who was such a great world champion that he busted himself open with his own chair shot. Big five-headed move from Jey Uso. Very nicely done. I'm glad that he's the one getting pushed, because Jey Uso, pinned LA Knight the next 2 nights later on Monday Night Raw of this week. You know, just to further cement who the top of the pecking order is. Now, I know the Vision got involved and LA Knight's fighting the Vision, but does it fucking matter? I just don't believe for a second that they're going to have LA Knight win the world title from Seth Rollins. And I am begging WWE to prove me wrong, but right now I'm not feeling it. I really do believe that LA Knight has hit his ceiling, and that to me is depressing because I had the faith in this group to do the right thing. And do the right thing by all of these people. We said the biggest thing that was renewed in WrestleMania 40 was trust in the process. That trust is gone. And what has happened with LA Knight is exactly indicative of that. What happened with Karrion Kross, as hilarious as that all went, is also a big part of it. You know, and I wasn't a big fan of Karrion Kross, but he was getting over. There was at least something to be done there. But then they kind of let that play out on TV and in the, I don't know. It's just, there's been so much bullshit. There's no way the morale of this company is where it was at WrestleMania 40. It just can't be the same. It's not for me, and I blame The Rock for this. I blame Travis Scott for this. And I blame Triple H for this. You know, I've been really hesitant to put the blame on the game, but the truth is the blame belongs on Triple H. Because this stagnance is his. It's not the writers, because the writers have to answer ultimately to somebody, and that's Hunter. And if you stopped listening to us, that much is clear. And right now, it has just been, I can't put up with it. It's been really frustrating, and it's not like the shows are bad. That's the thing that sucks. It's not like the shows are bad in quality. But there's unrest. And now, back to, again, I said this was going to be kind of a here's and there's. Back to the Usos and LA Knight. There was some discussion floating around about the fact that Jey Uso might turn, and what would a Jey Uso heel turn look like. And I will be honest with you, a single Jey Uso heel turn would be catastrophic to Jey Uso's push. Because you have to be a good worker to be a good heel. Because you need to bump around for the babyface. You need to be able to sell and oversell in order to make the babyface look bigger and stronger or rally from behind. Jey Uso doesn't have that ability. He is not the worker of quality to be able to pull that off. Neither was Jimmy. As a tag team, sure, they play off each other personality-wise. But as a single, heel Jey Uso would not be good. It would not be good. And I also heard like heel Jey versus babyface Roman, but Roman's the one who encouraged Jey to be like this, so I don't know if that dichotomy would necessarily work. But I don't know. It just, that's the thing to me, is it's just feeling like there's, the favoritism that WWE has always had is being put in the wrong place and being used long after it has ceased to be relevant. I think Yeet is dying, man. It's getting less and less reaction everywhere he goes because his matches are not very good. And, you know, and that's the thing. And with Jey Uso getting all of this and LA Knight, who was at Roman's level for a brief period, you know, back when they were, before Punk came back and Cody came back and all of that jazz. And if they had given LA Knight half of Jey Uso's push, I would be satisfied. And you know, there's something that bothers me, and it's not just Skylar who said this, but I hear this excuse from people all the time. Oh, well, they're making millions of dollars. They live comfortably. They get the tour all around the world. I'm sure they're fine. Let me make something clear. I'm a wrestling fan, so when I'm talking about what is being done to the wrestlers themselves or the gimmicks or what they are doing on screen, I don't give a flying fuck what their home life is like. I don't care how comfortable they are or how much they travel or what that fact that they got to see the Eiffel Tower while Eiffel Towering 3 other guys. I don't care a lick about what the wrestler's private life is like. That's called respect for kayfabe. That is why I don't care at all that LA Knight is fine even though he doesn't have the world title. Damn it, I want him to have the world title. And my point is that what I want and expect out of the pro wrestling that I want WWE to give me is not meeting the par that I was hoping it would have with the faith that I had in the process that was cultivated by WrestleMania 40. But this has been a year where it seems like they have done everything possible to alienate us from WWE and alienate me. And so that's why my passion here, I'm kind of getting it out now, because on a day-to-day basis, my interest is waning and waning and waning. Oh, Brock Lesnar beat John. Oh, well, okay, fine, whatever. You know, match 3 we're going to talk about in just a second. Match 4, which was the mixed tag. I heard that was long but good, and that Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins looked like a bunch of glittery gay toilet brushes. And, you know, whatever the case is, and that's great. And I love Punk, and I would have watched that, but I just didn't care. And then Cody, and now we get to Cody and Drew, and I want to make this is kind of my bring it all around point when it comes to the booking. There was some discussion, even amongst Cody and Orton and Drew themselves, to have Drew McIntyre win this belt and Cody lose and have Orton cost Cody. And the management said no. Cody wins clean. Cena wins. LOL. There was no chance Drew was winning on that night. And that's a shame because that would have been a nice, zesty, different direction you could have taken things. And the same thing with Brock and John. John was originally supposed to win. Nope. Brock has to win with 74 billion finishers. Here's why I'm getting nervous. Here's why I'm withdrawing. I've seen this show before by the other guy. This is looking more Vincey by the day. Not to the level of cartoonishly bad, but it's to the point where they're in the major moments, there's a lot of similar shit going down. And we said many times, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is time number, 800? And I don't know how many more I'm going to be able to last through if it does come to that. And I'm just worried about what the future implications of the way that booking is going now means for the long-term business of my investment in the WWE. They're going to keep making money no matter what. This has really been about a 45-minute rant that was condensed into a 7-minute CM Punk pipe bomb, but this is really the case. But the problem is now, CM Punk loves Big Brother. CM Punk went to room 101 in the Ministry of Love and got retrained to love Big Brother. And now he's standing there, repatriated in the WWE manner, but how much has really changed? I don't know, man. I just don't know. But what I do know is that I did watch a match because I felt kind of bad because I wanted to be a part of the WrestlePalooza review, but I didn't feel like watching the show, and they didn't want me to just be on the show and not watch it, and then I was going to surprise them and watch it, but then they told me don't show up if you don't watch it, so then I got butthurt and then didn't watch it, and then they did the podcast, which it was fine. I needed a Monday night. I'm in the middle of an opera. I'm driving an hour up to rehearsals, up and back every night, so I'm not really losing sleep over not being a part of the podcast. And besides, we got this one, but because we did watch one of the matches on the show, it is only fair that we review something from WrestlePalooza, and we will do it by bringing back an old segment. Roll that intro.
Operator, I'd like to order an ass whooping.
Match of the week. Match of the week. Match of the week.
Yes, sir. We've got the vacant Women's World Heavyweight Championship on the line between Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer. And the reason I watched this match was that it was pretty much universally considered the match of the night. And that everything else was like meh to good. But this was really the icing on the cake, top tier presentation from WWE. And I got to admit, it was a good match. I actually quite enjoyed myself watching this match. And there's something interesting about these two and about the dynamic here, because Naomi obviously had to forfeit the belt because she was pregnant, and therefore she was not able to, continue the really good heel run she was on, which is ultimately a shame because I was really getting into what Naomi was doing. But they ended up having this one-on-one match because Stephanie Vaquer did get a title opportunity in a previous set of victories, and Io Sky is Io Sky, and Triple H loves Io Sky. And the safe option here would have been to give Io Sky the belt. And that's where I thought they were going to do it. I thought they were going to go, let's give Io another one and then have somebody else beat her for it. But I have to admit, in the same way that I'm disappointed that they didn't take the chance on Drew at the main event, I am happy they did take the chance on making Stephanie Vaquer the women's champion here. Because this is not something they typically do. you don't see WWE when they're put into a position like this where they have an established talent and one they're trying to get over, have the one they're trying to get over actually win against the established talent in a championship setting that normally people would think they would not be winning. And so the fact that Stephanie ultimately came out with the win here was worth putting this level of investment in, and the crowd got behind this match considerably. And now I gotta say something about Io Sky. She is so much better than what Corny calls her. Because one thing that I think I didn't love about Io Sky previously was that it always felt that she was going move to move and not taking the time to get the audience involved with it. That was not the case in this match. You know, between her little pointing to her head like, hey, I'm crazy, doing kind of the, it's kind of like a Fortnite meme gif thing that she's got, which I don't mind, by the way. But it did start out a little slow. It took a while to get going. This match was like a diesel engine. They started with a collar and elbow tie-up. Io was a little sluggish early. The roll-up counters at 1 were also a little sluggish. But by the time we got to Stephanie Vaquer doing the spin-around arm drag, or I'm sorry, that was Io who did that. That was kind of cool. And then they started really gelling. And they started having good chemistry together. But the great thing is Io hits a flurry of offense and then takes a moment to get the crowd in to say, to what Io is doing. And that really shows the kind of experience that she's adapted since coming to the WWE. And it's why she's been put in the position that she's in. And I think that it's a great thing that she's got going for her in that vein, which is why she's in a position to be able to do the job to Stephanie and make it mean something. So I just want to give Io her flowers here because she has actually been doing, as often as she's been on the show, very well as far as the match consistency has been concerned as of late. They did the fake sit out from the sunset flip to the leg drop, which I really liked. Io Sky goes for a sunset flip on Stephanie Vaquer, and Stephanie threatens to do the Rikishi drop and land on Io's chest, and Io went to dodge, and Stephanie didn't do it. She went to dodge, but Stephanie didn't do it, and instead went to the ropes and hit her with a leg drop and kind of faked Io out, and I really liked that. It was a very creative spot. I hate that I had this thought, but I have to ask it, and I'm going to ask the same thing about Rhea Ripley. And I know that they're both excellent workers. So that the fact that this is applicable to both of them is kind of funny. Because their wrestling credentials do back it up, in my opinion. But how much of their popularity is the thirst trap of their outfits? Because think about the Devil's Kiss, right? And think about the Devil's Kiss and the amount of Booker T simping out for it, and how much people simp out for it. I mean, it's a silly move. It's what wrestling's all about. Again, not knocking Rhea when she does the stink face, right? Obviously, they're milking the fact that cake sells, and I'm not trying to disparage either of these women, but it makes me wonder what the ratio of men watching Stephanie Vaquer and Rhea Ripley matches is for their wrestling, or for the fact that they get a free slice of Marie Antoinette bona fide cake during each one of those matches. To those of us who like women and wrestling, it's just an added bonus. But anyway, we get a nice double underhook backbreaker, which looked devastating. And then Io does this great, fall back down. And then I got hot at the referee. Because on more than one occasion, both of these ladies were down, and Eddie Rango looked at both of them and didn't start a count. Back in the day, Earl Hebner would look at both, and then they'd start. If they both couldn't get up off the ground, it was a double count out. Why is Eddie Rango not even attempting to make a count there? It wasn't the first time that he did it. He did it multiple times, and it irked me. But again, nitpicks here. This is a nitpick. There was a nice sunset bomb counter that Io tried to do it to Stephanie, and Stephanie countered with an apron knee to the neck, which was gross. And then Stephanie Vaquer followed it up with a crossbody out of the ring, and then a crossbody into the ring. And both of those looked absolutely terrific. But there is something interesting I noticed when Stephanie Vaquer went to do the crossbody, and I noticed it with Io as well, but I didn't know it was consistent. the women, when they use a springboard or do a springboard, they use the bottom rope to gain a little extra bounce and a little extra leverage. The men don't have to do that, and I think it's mostly because of the size that the men are in comparison to the women height-wise. But it was an interesting observation that both Io and Stephanie Vaquer used the bottom rope to assist them to get to the top rope to hit that springboard, and I bet a lot of that has to do with the fact that WWE uses real ropes for their ring ropes instead of cables, which are a little bit easier to do all that with. But in any case, then we get a great German that was sold wonderfully by Io Sky. Io Sky's selling really does not get enough credit either. I think she is so dramatically improved in all phases of her work. It's slower, it still looks terrific, but there's also pacing that's gotten much better. And while there might have been an argument about Io Sky not necessarily being in the same league as the Rhea Ripleys of the world a few years ago, there is no dispute that she belongs now. And then again, the German sell by Io and Rango didn't count. But then they get back and they start doing some strikes. I think the weakest part of Io Sky's game is her strikes, because they really don't look effective and they don't look like they hurt. But the crowd is really into this. And then these dragon screws. Stephanie, for the love of God, you are going to snap somebody's leg. They looked amazing. And Io Sky did a really good job, for the most part, of selling her knee once these dragon screws started taking place. But it still went back and forth. Io went back. I will say there is one thing I don't like about Io. She goes to do that moonsault that she does, but she always steps over her opponent. And I don't like that because she's a babyface as Io, and that is more like disrespectful heelish kind of stuff to me. Again, small thing, but she did it every time that she went for that moonsault. And it was just like, oh, Io, you don't need to do that. You could just go for the moonsault. It's just a little heelish, and it didn't need to be. But anyway, we get that big second scounder. Then we get the Poon Pound of Doom. But then that's what I called the Devil's Kiss, by the way, because that's what everybody's thinking about, and that's what I mean. They just like watching that cake jiggle. And Booker T, being the coy dog that he is, has gotten that over, and we didn't like it when Vince did it, but it's fine when Booker T does it. Anyway, and Io gets a 2 count after kicking out of the SVB, the Stephanie Vaquer bomb, real creative name. Io selling the leg. Then we get the Spanish C4 fly flip bottom avalanche sands of time from the top rope, which, to be fair, I don't remember the last time I've seen one of those on WWE programming. It's been a hot minute since I've seen a C4, or Spanish fly, or flip bottom, or avalanche sands of time. So props to them for doing it. It would have been nicer if Io sold a little bit more of her knee after the fact, but small potatoes. She exposed her injured knee. Thought that was kind of stupid, to be honest with you. I know that she was trying to inflict more punishment on the double knees into the corner, but if you've got an injured knee, why would you make that more vulnerable to do? And Stephanie Vaquer, and then she sells the knee, after she misses the moonsault, and I know it's not a spiral tap. Josh again made sure to say it wasn't. But boy, that looked a lot like a spiral tap. I know it's the other direction. I understand the difference. But I could understand why Michael Cole would call it a spiral tap. It didn't matter. It looked great, and it won, which it should have, because that move always looks good, no matter whether it's a spinal tap, spiral tap, or spital tap, because it's got 8 legs. No matter what, that move looks great. Stephanie Vaquer winning the belt, I think, is a great move. It'll be interesting to see what they do with her going forward and how she's going to interact with other women in the division, because now there's going to be more pressure to be a more all-around performer. You know, she's a lot better with her English. I heard the Chris Van Vliet interview. It's much better. So it'll be interesting to see what it is we get out of this run. But I'm looking forward to it. It was a good match. And I think that Stephanie Vaquer and Io Sky both have a case to be in conversation for the Grapplies this year. But I'll be honest with you, it's going to be harder this year to do the Grapplies because of my interest waning. We're still going to do it, but it's going to be hard to judge people because I'm not going to feel as strongly for my nominees as I did before. But you know what? We'll cross that bridge when we reach it. We've got a tradition to uphold, and I've got a lot of fun ideas for this channel too. In addition to watching old pay-per-views, I want to do more Guess the Card. I also want to do Josh Ageddon, Skylar, and myself a 3-show series called Build a Show, where you get 6 match slots, and you pick 6 matches of your choosing. Doesn't matter where they are or what they are. The only rules are that you can't have the same wrestler competing twice on the show. But you find 6 matches that you like. We watch the show from start to finish. You pick the match order. We watch the show, and then we judge what your show was, the way that you built it, how you built it as far as the match structure is concerned, and then giving our overall rating of the show that we have built using matches that have been done before. So there's a lot coming up in the Court-Martail podcast time, but until then, it is time to go to our first commercial break. Thank you all for letting me air out my grievances and get my therapy out. I'm going to go eat some food with my loving family. I hope you get to do the same. Thank you all very much for coming, for listening to me, your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, and we'll be right back right after this.